Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Cadence independent media production. Today we are doing another hack that is seemingly attributed to John Bonham again, involving the bass drum. If we had a nickel for all of the things that have been attributed to John Bonham, we would have a lot of nickels. And this is one that I definitely for sure had never heard of. And we've done a lot of different things that were, attributed to famous drummers that had a really specific sound or something about their sound that everybody really appreciates and loves. John just keeps coming up, man. So this one, not only is an unusual thing to do, but also we really didn't have the foggiest idea what it was going to do to the sound if we did this to the drum. Before we get into what it is, here's the drum by itself without anything going on inside of it. This is the House Pearl bass drum, 22 inches. It's got a EQ4 UV batter head on it, and it's got an EQ3 Reso with a port. Just to get out ahead of it again, I know that generally, and maybe all the time, John Bonham used full front heads. We're not doing that. We're not trying to recreate a sound. We're trying to understand this technique that is attributed to him. And that technique is the use of a famous household item, tinfoil. And the idea behind this, I don't know, but what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to line the inside of the bass drum with tinfoil, and it's supposed to do something significant. I have no idea what's going to happen, and I'm super excited. So we're going to do that real quick, or real slow. I'm not sure how we're going to do it, but we're going to do it, and then we're going to see what it does. So what we did here is we used packing tape, and we made little kind of rolled up things of packing tape to make them double sticky so that we could basically just adhere the stuff to the top and bottom. Now this is a little bit deeper of a drum than Bonham would use. He was usually using 14-inch deep. So we had to do 2 layers of it to get full coverage from front to back. If it were a 14, say like a 24 or a 26 by 14, like you might have seen in one of his kits, we probably would have just done 1 layer straight around and had a little bit of like dead space on either end of it, up front to the heads. It's not touching the heads. It's not touching anything but the shell, and it had a unbelievable impact on the basketball-y sound and really, really dialed in the low end and made it super punchy. It's noticeable acoustically, and it's really, really noticeable, particularly in the close mics, which does feed into the rest of the sound of the kit. And when you're blending everything together, this reminds me of the sandbag experiment. Like I thought that nothing was going to happen. And that maybe something a little was going to happen. And as soon as we did it, Ben spun around at me and was like, put the headphones on, man. And So I see now I have to do this because it's incredible. It's actually a completely different sound. Most likely that what we're experiencing here is some kind of modification of how reflective the inside of the drum is. Anything in there is going to change how the sound bounces around as it's leaving the drum. And for sure, the high-end part of the sound wants to jump around a lot. That's why like mahogany or softer wood drums have a different sort of high-end than something very hard like maple or even harder than that. As far as I can tell, it's actually just sort of swallowing them up. I feel like it's behaving somewhat like a dampener, but not a dampener for the heads. It's actually just sort of swallowing up some of the high end that can't knock around in there and get accentuated anymore. Another potential for this is that the reason why a basketball sounds like that when you bounce it is because it's perfectly spherical. So it has this sort of perfect environment to accentuate those high ends and kind of like foment them and grow them. So the sort of more like moon-like texture of tinfoil, when we get it in there, it's not perfectly flat. We didn't glue it down or anything like that. That could also be something contributing to this, just in terms of the high end not being able to perfectly bounce through the exact same distance in every direction because it is a cylinder. So all that to say, in the realm of inexpensive hacks to modify your bass drum sound, you really can't beat a few feet of tinfoil. I'm really surprised. I'm kind of speechless, to be totally honest. Because again, and we've said this in recent and other videos, subtle hacks that just affect the part that you're frustrated with are so valuable because you don't have to do much to mitigate what else it does. And in the case of this, it didn't do anything detrimental to the low end. It just cleaned up the beater sound on the internal mic and warmed up the sound on the external mic. And then in the room, it just still sounds good. So that kind of meets all the criteria for me for a super functional hack and not just a crazy myth, really. Now, on the flip side, it's worth noting that there is some kind of crunchy, almost snare wiry undertone to this because it is tinfoil that's getting moved by air. In the bass drum sound, in the close mics in particular, it's kind of above 8K. It's very high. It's in a range where generally we're not looking for a lot from the bass drum. So if you're in a situation where you're concerned with that, whether it's live or in a studio, they're going to be EQing it at least a little bit anyway to sculpt the sound of the drum, even if only a little bit. So not a huge deal. And I think it's fair to say that if this was a thing that Bonham did, it would have been with full heads on both sides, and that probably would have held in that crispiness if that was in there, and made it not an issue in the recording process. All right, let's hear these back to back. So there you have it, another thing you can do to your bass drum to just kind of see what happens. And it certainly had a positive effect on this drum when we had these heads on it tuned this way. I recommend it. It's not super invasive, it's very inexpensive, and you'll know right away if it's going to do something that's useful to you. All right, that about wraps it up. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you get notifications about all of our new videos. We are still doing Tuesday tutorials every Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, as well as some other videos, snare spotlights, Patreon specials. Thanks so much again to our patrons on our Patreon for helping out and making all of this possible. You are really supporting this season and making it happen, and we have a lot of really special stuff coming down the pipe specifically for you guys. If you haven't checked it out, please follow the link below. Contribute if you can. Check out the options. There's different levels. There's a lot of stuff on there. And lastly, definitely let me know what you know about this specifically, because where we heard it, they were attributing it to people in Led Zeppelin who saw him do it, like John Paul Jones saying he would put tinfoil in there. I'd never seen a photo, I've never heard of it before, but it worked. It did something, and it did something good. And that's what we're after when we're trying to bust myths here. So, yeah, tell me your stories if you got them.